Hey guys, what's going on? Today's video, Cine lenses, because there is a huge difference between a normal lens, this is what comes with the Sony ZV-E10, and something like a Cine lens. Look at the size of this thing. This is a Mica 35mm 2.1 Cine lens. Cine lenses are very different animals to the lens that you might have got with your Sony ZV-E10. So just for the fun of it today, and for me and you together to learn something new, I have put this Mica 35mm prime lens onto the Sony ZV-E10. Now, there's a huge amount of differences between a normal lens and something like a Cine lens, but we'll get onto that in a sec. But let's show you guys how different the image looks from something like a cinema lens. The footage does look beautiful, right? Now, okay, it's not the most exciting footage in the world, but something like a Cine lens is very, very different. Now, what does that mean? Well, this thing's completely manual, which means the camera doesn't even really know it exists, to be honest, because it's completely manual lens, which means there is no autofocus. This is a big focus ring that you've got to turn and turn and turn. Here's your aperture ring, which you dial your exposure in, except it's not called an aperture ring. It's not called aperture at all in a Cine lens, in fact. But before I get into what these things are actually called, the way it allows light into the camera, because it's not called an f-stop at all, it's something completely very, very different, and not just a change in the letter name, these things can be really, really expensive. This, for example, cost close to $1,000. Now, Mica, who are the manufacturer of this, these things are built like an absolute tank. But there's other Cine lens manufacturers out there, and they're substantially cheaper. Samyang or Rokinon, which you might be familiar, depending on what side of the world you're in. Rokinon one side, Samyang the other. They offer cinema lenses as well, which by all accounts are really, really good. But the one thing all Cine lenses have in common is there is no f-stop, the aperture. So remember aperture, we've often talked about it in videos. The lower the number, like 1.8, 1.4, the blurrier the background that you get. Right now, this is on a Sony 1.8 lens, and that's the f-stop, 1.8. This, however, nope, no f-stops, no f. It's actually called a T, because T-stops give an exact measure of light that's going through the actual lens versus how wide the lens is actually open. So once it says T 2.1 or whatever, then it's an exact measurement. There you go, every single time. Every time. There is another huge advantage with Cine lenses. They're built incredibly well. Some are a little bit more plasticky. This, though, is entirely made of metal, this Mica 35mm. Now, besides that, they give a better image quality. It's sharper right across the frame. There's no kind of softening at the edges. There's very little barrel distortion, so things don't look a bit fisheye. And, of course, there's little to no vignetting as well. Now, this Mica 35mm 2.21 on a camera like this, because it's an APS-C, it's not going to actually be a 35mm, it's more like a 49mm with the crop. And because there's no autofocus, you're constantly trying to focus, and yeah, it's very, very close. So a wider lens on an APS-C camera, it might be a better option, but yeah, this really is not for vlogging. However, with you know, little bit of preparation, measuring, trying to eyeball the focus, using peaking, which means what's in red is in focus, you can kind of you know, get things together, which means the camera is like so far away from me right now. Yeah, no, not a good idea. Granted, if you're in a talking head situation, like in a studio setup or at home or in your own home studio, then absolutely you could try and get it together. But keep in mind, putting a Cine lens on an APS-C camera, you've got that 1.4 crop or whatever the crop is on the camera. But that's not to say it can't be done. It can. All that said though, can this little kid lens that you get with the Sony ZV-E10 be of use? Let's do a quick couple of comparisons between the two different lenses on the Sony ZV-E10. Now, I'm not going to tell you which lens is which, might be obvious, but You have a guess in the comments which lens is which. Let's get into it. Did you figure out which was the Cine lens from Mica, or which was the Sony ZV-E10 kit lens? Both lenses were on the Sony ZV-E10. Option B was this, and option A was the 16-50. Did you guess correct? Cinema lenses are a complete luxury. Are they for everybody? No, but you know what? If you were looking to do something different and upskill yourself, and if anything, buying a Cine lens has forced me to look at exposure a little bit more, look at focus settings a little bit more, and just kind of basically look at a ton of YouTube videos and trying to hone the craft when it comes to exposing skin tones. It's just one of those things which it's definitely in the do you need it, but it's in the nice to have or the want pile versus the need pile. But I wouldn't shy away from it, because if anything, a manual lens, and you can pick up Cine lenses or these old fully manual vintage lenses everywhere for next to nothing, and you get really unique looks out of them. Now, will I be shooting everything on the Cine lens? Absolutely not, but it's just something that helps you become a better creator and try and just widen your horizons a little bit more. And of course, none of this is any good without a story. It doesn't matter what the lens is, doesn't matter what the camera is. None of it's any good without a story.